Kevin Weeks is in an interrogation room being questioned about his former crime boss, James Whitey Bulger. Kevin recounts the first time he met Bulger. Kevin was working as a bodyguard in a casino when some guys started causing trouble. He refused to let the guys into the casino, so the guys started beating him up. Whitey and his men were inside when they learned of the commotion. They stepped outside and came face to face with the Angulo brothers. In 1975, Whitey was the leader of the Winter Hill Gang, which controlled most organized crime in South Boston, while the Angulo brothers were part of the New England Mafia family controlling the North End. The morning following the fight, Kevin is picked up by Whitey. He is also startled to find the guy that beat him up in the car. The trio drives to a deserted park, and to Kevin's sweet surprise, Whitey starts punching the guy. He invites Kevin too, and the guys beat the man senseless. They throw him out of the car, leaving him for dead. Whitey asks Kevin to become part of his clan, and Kevin agrees with no hesitation. While driving through Whitey's neighborhood, Kevin realizes the man is a cherished community member, and many people respect him. Later, Whitey goes to his mother's house for a family dinner. Whitey lives with his longtime girlfriend, Lindsay Sear, and their young son, Douglas. He also has a close relationship with his brother Billy, Massachusetts Senate President. While having the meal, Billy discloses that their childhood friend, John Connolly, is back and works with the FBI. Funny enough, Connolly has reached out to Whitey wanting to meet, so Whitey agrees to the meeting. The two men meet, and Connolly quickly informs Whitey that a price has been placed on his head by the Angulo brothers. Connolly offers Whitey protection against his crimes in exchange for information that could bring down the brothers. He states that the FBI is interested in bringing down the Italian mafia, so he would be protected. Whitey refuses to be an informant, citing that the gangs kill rats and he would suffer the same fate. A while later, the Angulo brothers send a motorcycle-riding assassin to execute one of Whitey's soldiers. This action causes Whitey to agree to Connolly's offer, but wants the affair to be a business deal. Whitey hopes that by giving out damning information, he will eliminate his enemies and be at the top of the food chain. Whitey's other right-hand men include Stephen Flemmi and Johnny Martirano. In the present, Martirano is interrogated next. He reveals that, at the time, he had been the callous leader of Boston's executioners. One day, Whitey and his crew are at a bar when one of Winter Hill's enforcers, Tommy King, threatens to kill a police officer. Whitey refuses to kill the officer, causing Tommy to insult him drunkenly. The following day, Whitey has Martirano pick Tommy up for a targeted hit. Unfortunately, the men drive to a nearby beach and Martirano shoots Tommy. Whitey feels that Tommy talked too much and might be a problem if he spoke to the wrong people. Tommy's body is dumped under the bridge, which Martirano confesses to be the burial ground for the mafia. Whitey shares his involvement with the FBI with Stevie. Stevie is skeptical about being an informant as well, but Whitey convinces him that this is the right move for the business. Meanwhile, Connolly asks his boss Charles Maguire permission to use Whitey as an informant. Charles reveals that Whitey had dealings with LSD in the past, so he might be a liability. However, Connolly, backed by his co-worker John Morris, convinces Charles. Charles agrees to bring Whitey on board, but will not protect him in narcotics or murder cases. At home, Whitey learns that Douglas is sick, so he tells Lindsay to take him to the hospital. Whitey joins his family together with Connolly's for dinner. The lively atmosphere turns into despair when Billy finds out from Lindsay that Douglas is terminally ill. At the hospital, Whitney learns that his son has Reye syndrome. Since the condition worsens with time, Lindsay wants to take Douglas off life support when the time comes. A furious Whitey argues with her, but Lindsay blames him for being away from their son. Whitey storms out of the hospital after throwing a fit of rage. Eventually, he sits by his son's bedside until the latter dies. In the interrogation room, Martirano reveals that Douglas' death made Whitey more violent and ruthless. Whitey became a prime narcotics boy using the FBI's complete protection. When Connolly threatens to pull the plug, Whitey gives him tips to keep him interested. Charles starts getting suspicious as to why Connolly is pushing to protect Whitey that much. Elsewhere in the city, John Callahan reaches out to Whitey. He is the president of a sports team and embezzles money for Whitey's shady dealings. John wants Whitey to execute a man named Wheeler. He had discovered the embezzlement and would be named president in a few days. If that deal went through, Whitey would be out of a lucrative deal. After planning to kill Wheeler, Whitey realizes someone had accidentally heard the discussion. The man, Brian, is paid off to keep his mouth shut. Soon, news of Wheeler's death in a public parking lot reaches Brian. He is terrified that he might be next since Whitey has a reputation for killing rats. Brian goes to the FBI to report the case, but Connolly interrogates him. While giving his account, Connolly seems to be taking Whitey's side, fueling Charles' doubts. As soon as Brian leaves, Connolly tells Whitey about the accusation. Shortly after, Whitey tails Brian and shoots him in the parking lot for snitching. The news makes Charles storm into Connolly's office and demand an explanation. Connolly reaches out to Bulger, who gives him pictures of Angulo brothers' hangouts. The FBI gets distracted dealing with the Angulo brothers, while Whitey continues to expand his empire and do shady dealings. He murders John and takes all the man's property, giving him resources to grow his business. The FBI takes down the Angulo brothers, leaving Whitey as the king of Boston. Similarly, Connolly's life changes as he gets closer to the gang, receiving expensive gifts from them. He also gets a huge promotion at work. His wife expresses disgust at Connolly's friendship with Whitey, causing Whitey to threaten her at a cookout in Connolly's house. Whitey's mother passes away, and her death devastates Whitey so much. He descends into violence, and his behavior is unpredictable. Connolly's world is threatened when Bulldog prosecutor Fred Weishak is appointed the new assistant U.S. attorney. Connolly tries to get Fred on his side with Whitey, but Fred is adamant about taking Whitey and his gang down. Fred gets an informant among the many people dealing with loss after Whitey terrorized them. One day, Whitey and Stevie pick up Deborah, Stevie's stepdaughter, who had been arrested for prostitution. Whitey's paranoia gets the best of him as he thinks that Deborah might have said something to police officers after spending the night in jail. Furthermore, Deborah is a drug addict, so she could say anything for a fix, something that the police exploit. Whitey therefore strangles Deborah to death while a remorseful Stevie watches. Shortly after, Whitey is contacted by a man looking to buy a large shipment of weapons. The mafia leaders feel that Whitey can handle such a shipment, so Whitey meets with the sellers and the trade takes off. A while later, Whitey sees news reportings that the ship carrying the weapons has been spotted and apprehended by the FBI. He learns that someone sold him out. In the FBI, Fred reports that his informant has gone silent. Since Whitey has been off radar for a while, Connolly suspects something is wrong. It turns out that Whitey had caught Fred's informant, tortured, and killed him. Fearing repercussions for his part in Whitey's dealings, Connolly's partner Morris divulges everything to a news reporter working with the Boston Globe. Whitey is revealed to be an FBI informant to the whole world. Connolly meets up with Whitey, who reveals that all this time he had been using Connolly's link with the FBI to stay ahead and had no intention of leaving the gang. Connolly feels betrayed as he thought the two were friends, to which Whitey sums it up to the cost of doing business. The shame and rebuttal of the FBI's involvement with organized crime makes them crack down on the Winter Hill Gang. At night, Whitey calls Billy and says his goodbyes. Shortly after this, Connolly, Kevin, Martirano, and Stevie are all arrested. A textual epilogue reveals that Whitey left Boston in 1995. Kevin received a sentence of 5 years in prison for testifying against Whitey, his mentor. Martirano received 12 years. Morris was granted full immunity for his crimes in exchange for cooperation and testimony against his friend and colleague John Connolly. Connolly refused to testify against Whitey and was ultimately convicted of second-degree murder and received a 40-year sentence. Billy left the Senate to become the Chancellor of the University of Massachusetts, but later resigned when it was known that he was in touch with Whitey. In July 2011, an anonymous tip led to Whitey's arrest in Santa Monica, California, after being on the FBI's most wanted list for 12 years and on the lam for 16 years. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 5 years for the deaths of at least 11 people. He was eventually killed in prison. What are your thoughts on this notorious mobster? Do leave a comment telling us your favorite part of the movie. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next recap. Until next time, folks, take care and goodbye.